instead of us trying to make something, use what God has given us. The material is his, the lives, the people, the gifts, the talents, and all we need to do is leverage what he's given us, and we'll see what it is he's manifesting in that season.
Shav is a nothingness, but it's a nothingness that is something. So this nothingness is you're creating within yourself an emptiness by taking false reports in. And it's actually kind of talking about that you've silenced God. Everything was predestined since before, even whether it's the trees or I still go back to the artisans and the goldsmiths and the coppersmiths and the silversmiths. At one point, they were a baby. There's so many decisions along the way that got them to that place, and all of it was known before the foundation of the world. We even have, because you look at the animals on it, we have the ram skin dyed red. And in your study, did you run across the word tachash?
Yes, animals that don't exist anymore.
Animals that don't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So
that were coming in a bunch of different colors. Like, who, where?
Yeah, like seven different colors, I think it is. Yeah. So, and the deal is no one even knows what the animal was. So one of them is that it was a land animal containing one horn and seven colors in their hide. And the other one is that it was an ocean-bearing animal that only existed in mating pairs and was only existed, but either way you slice it, the animals only existed for the making of the tabernacle. Now, my personal opinion, because some of the rabbis will say, well, it's an animal that's normally born unkosher because, what do you know, can you bring it up on your phone? What does the English say? Speak to the Israelites and take contribution for me. You must take the contribution for me from every man whose heart prompts him to give. Oh, by the way, also the way this reads on from every man whose heart prompts him to give, one of the rules that we get from this, one of the halakha or one of the teachings on it is it's something that you're given anyways, meaning you give money away. Hopefully you get something in return, but nonetheless, it's things that you're already given out. And so that the things that are already a part of who we are, that's what we give to the Lord. And that's why, when I was saying the Lord spoke to me, I don't get to decide who my media gifts go to. That's not my decision. So I can give them out to make provision for myself, but then I also have to be open for him to tell me, now go over there and give it. Go over there and give it. Now do that. And I mean, volunteer work as an offering, because it's something that I possess and can do what I want with, but it's those things that he was requiring them to bring in. So even on the artisans, it was their ability was just as much as an offering to the Lord as hammering out the gold going into the tabernacle, the time and the labor. And that's not just that moment, but all up until that moment, because we believe they knew, that there was a certain amount of prophetic knowledge that we don't really have today. That there was, maybe they didn't know the full details of it, but they knew when a gift from God was a gift from God instead of, hey, look at how great I am and look at what I can do. There's interest, and this has nothing to do with the Bible, but it was Eddie Van Halen. I watched an interview on him, and they were asking him, because he was considered a pioneer and a genius because of the way he played guitar. And he says, I didn't do anything. He said, it comes to me. So what he was saying is he didn't study long enough to learn those things or hard enough to do those things. The ideas of the music that he created, he recognized came from without him. And I think that that's even for, I don't know if he was a believer or not, but still that's such a level of discernment that it's hard to find in houses of worship, to understand what it is that you did add to yourself and what it is that the Lord added to you, and then the responsibility of those things that the Lord added to. Yeah. So turquoise, we have turquoise, wool dyed turquoise, and then we have purple and scarlet, which is also wool dyed, and then we have linen, goat hair, and then red dyed skin rams and the skins of the tachash. And that's the animal that doesn't exist anymore, but that once did exist. And so, but yeah, no, see, you have the same one. I was asked you to go to one of your English version Bibles on that. Yeah.
So I'm looking at what you're looking at. Okay.
Do you read that version in church now? Or do you stick with the...
Actually, I kind of bounce around.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's what I do. I've gotten where I don't use the English writings anymore, and it's kind of messing me up, but I like being messed up, so it works okay.
So the English one, and rams' skins dyed red and badger skins.
Yeah.
Right.
Nowhere does this tachash or tachashim is right there. Nowhere does it say badgers.
Right.
Nowhere. And so some version will say badgers, and one version says porpoise, which is interesting because a porpoise is not kosher.
No.
But I was hoping your version would actually say porpoise, because the interesting thing is one of the rabbis believes or used to teach that it was an animal that typically was non-kosher, but it was miraculously born kosher. Now, I don't know if that means they had cloven hoods or if it chewed the cud or what, or scales. I don't know what made it kosher, but that it was kosher for this event. So they at least had toyed with the idea, because outside of a fish, there's nothing that comes from the ocean that would be kosher. If you're talking about whales, porpoises, and all of that, dolphins, those aren't kosher. Now, I have my own theory. It's not a good theory, but I have my own theory. Because of that rabbi teaching that, there are some animals, for instance, you have a frog, that it's an amphibian. It breathes oxygen, can live on the land, but when it starts out as I call them tadpoles or polywogs, it actually had these kind of salamander-like gills and breathed out of the water. You have the lungfish, lives in the water but breathes air. But if you look at sea turtles, their life starts on the land, and then they spend their lives in the ocean. Right. So it's not uncommon in nature now for an animal to start in one place and end up in another place. So my theory is that the animal, without knowing any details or specifics, that it started out in the ocean and was unkosher as an ocean one, according to according to the laws of fish and things like that. But once it gets to land, it's no longer unkosher. So that's my theory, because that's the only way it works with all the rabbis, is putting it together. But like I said, that's just my theory.
I can't even imagine badgers being because
the amount of skins it would take,
right? For
it's
one, and then
badgers.
badger skins are multi-hued like that. So I'm like, you couldn't. That'd be
and that's another. I'm sorry, where was that verse again? 5. That's another good point, because it says when things are dyed, the wool is dyed turquoise, purple, and scarlet, and then you have the ram skins are dyed red, and then you have in just a couple places where the skins aren't dyed. So then you're left to believe that it must be the natural color of the animal, and tachash is one of those. And the tachash hide sits on top of the other skins, which means that's the one that people see. And so I want you to do something for me. Go to Isaiah 60, verse 3.
Isaiah 60 and 3.
And the reason why I'm having you to go there, so the Hebrew word for skin spelt is Ayin Vav Resh. The Hebrew word for light, which is or, the Hebrew word for light is also or, but it's Aleph Vav Resh. And there's an interesting correlation between those two words. They're sound-alikes. Or skin, or light. And so there's matter of fact, I'm going to read this. It's a Jewish tradition. In the Messianic era, the Lord will slay the Leviathan and use its skin to make a canopy for the banquet of the righteous, and the splendor will shine from one end of the world to the other. So there's some sort of connection between skin and light here. And we've talked about this before. Moshe, when he comes down, his face is shining. Right. His skin is shining. So there's this tachash. The reason why that's kind of important is because it's what everyone else is seeing when they're looking in. So then for us, then it resembles something, whatever kind of animal it is. The reason why badger doesn't work and porpoise doesn't work is it has to be, the splendor has to just be off the charts. Exactly. Like it's a skin you had to walk by and just say, wait, what was that? Right. That is amazing, But anyways, go ahead. And the reason being, this is kind of the fulfillment of.
So in Isaiah 60, verse 3, it says, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Yeah.
And so what's interesting about this, we know God is dwelling in the midst, or the pretense this guy's dwelling in the midst, but how lovely, Matovu ohalacha Yaakov, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. Right. So these skins also meant light. It's looking in on the tents of Jacob down near the city of Sukkot and seeing all these tents for the nations, for the Gentiles looking in. It's not just what they see, but it's kind of like what they see gives them a certain feeling about what they're seeing. Right. Whether that be the peace or joy or whatever it's doing for them. But in seeing all of these skins, there's a light that's coming with it, and there's something that's communicating to them. So again, whatever tachash was, it had to be one incredible animal. But there's one thing, because I don't think me and you have ever had this conversation before. Genesis 3:1, Chabad. You can do the Tanakh on that one. Oh, you know what? Can you use Can you use a different translation? Someone's got to be the Christian at this table.
Okay.
So you're going to have to bring your Christian Bibles with you.
All right. No problem.
But I can appreciate that, That's how you do what you do.
All right. Genesis 3:1.
Yep.
Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
Okay, so it's right off the bat where it says that the serpent was more what?
Subtle.
This one in the English says cunning. It doesn't say that. It's this word right here, arom, naked. It's the same word. Let's find this. I need to go to where Adam and Eve were naked in the garden. I need that one in the Hebrew. Yeah.
That will be...
Oh, yeah, you give the chapter and verse, yeah.
Yeah, verse 10.
What chapter?
The same chapter, verse 10.
Oh, verse 10, okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, the first time that it says naked.
No, that's fine, though. It still has the word.
Yeah.
So...
Because verse 7 was when they recognized. Verse 10 is when they're responding to God. But in verse 7, and the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons.
So it's arom, but it's the same word, aram and arom. It's the same word for both of these. So Adam and Eve were naked. Same word, means their skin is visible, arom. And then you have the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So how do you say that? The serpent was more naked than all the beasts, because that's really how it... So whatever this word for their nakedness, or whatever state their skin was in, because it is about the nakedness because of the sin that would transpire and that they would know that if they were naked. Mm-hmm. But before that point, even though we're using the word naked, that's just not quite what it means. You're talking almost the same as this tachash skin, some kind of skin of splendor that's on Adam and Eve, but the serpent was more than that. Whatever that was, that splendor, the serpent was more so. This is why the serpent is a legitimate player. I know we use the word serpent, which is nachash, but it's not quite literal. It's not, because I've heard it preached, snakes used to have legs, and then because of the penalty, so now they crawl on their bellies. This was not a copperhead snake in the garden. This was something that had more splendor than all the beasts of the field. And somehow the beasts of the field, the serpent, and Adam and Eve are on the same plane. But this one shunned more than them. Anyways, but it's the idea of mixing the light and the skin, that there was something going on there. You got anything else?
How the whole tabernacle itself represented this idea, this concept that God had a way of perceiving and viewing his interaction and his relationship with man and what he wanted us to see in it. That was the thing that stood out the most. Yeah. That part right there was like, oh,
yeah,
I got to, and it's the same thing that's always impressed me every time I've read the tabernacle in scripture, is I need to raise my consciousness about the way I view I'm still thinking too low.
Yeah.
Because this is how God sees it. And I'm looking at it, through the lens of all, I got to, because of course, we come to God, with all of the things that we carry, the things that we failed, the stuff that we're like, I've been delivered. I know the blood covers and the yada, yada, but I'm consciously aware of all of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm working through that so I can get to a place where my gratitude and my esteem of who God is supersedes all of my view of my failing.
Yeah.
So that my attitude can be right when I come before him. So I can just say, okay, it's about you. It's not about me, because if it was about me, I wouldn't even be qualified to be here. So let me just bring put my isms down and my other stuff down and come into this thing and be with you in the space that you have provided.
Yeah.
That changes things.
Yeah.
That changes the dynamic. That allows, that gives me the freedom to just enjoy God.